Hi guys, I'm Abigail Toll. I'm the Programs and Communications Coordinator at Mite.org, and today I'm with Dr. Ahdoot. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. So my name is Michael Ahdoot. I'm a urologic oncologist. That means I'm a urologist who specializes in cancer surgeries for people who have bladder, prostate, kidney cancer predominantly. And I work at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles.
We met you, or we were introduced to you through our project with MiracleFeet. We've worked with them now. This is our second partnership, first in Pakistan and then through Nigeria. And we learned that you were on the team that helped invent or come up with a design for the foot abduction brace that they use. Can you tell us how you got into that space and were on that team?
Yeah. So I went to the medical school at Stanford, and the Stanford has a really exciting kind of design programs. They have a few different design programs. So during my medical school, I decided to take a year off and basically do the design programs. And I did the biodesign program and the regular design school program. And in the design school, they have a full year-long course. It's basically all focused on design for extreme affordability. And so, as I took that class, and as part of that class, one of the projects that was given to us as an opportunity was basically MiracleFeet saying, "Hey, we need a good clubfoot brace. The braces that we try to buy in the United States are super expensive. They're not that good. We're not very happy with them. The ones we buy overseas in developing nations are very low quality, and they're having all kinds of issues with like children having blisters. We're trying to come up with a better one, and we're looking for someone to do it." And that project just spoke to me. And so I basically petitioned to be on it and was selected on that team. And it was me, two engineers, two engineering students, and one business school student. And collectively, the four of us worked on developing this brace for what ended up being over 2 years.
Um, for anyone who doesn't know a lot about Clubfoot, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, sure. So when children are born, normally their feet are kind of like normal. So they walk on the bottom surface. But when the child is in the mom or in utero, the feet actually develop kind of turned inwards, and as you develop, they rotate out. And if that process doesn't complete, you can actually be born with your feet not rotated all the way out. The kind of feet come in like this, and that can happen on one foot. So you get born with one foot that's normal, the other one that's rotated inward, or both feet. And as you can imagine, walking on the side of your foot, kind of the inside portion of your foot is not comfortable, not normal. You're unable to run a lot of times. There's just a lot of functional limitations in this malformation. And so, what was discovered was that these children initially used to get surgery, where you do like an open surgery, move the bones, screw them in place, and put the feet back in their location. But in more recent times, they learned that you can actually gradually move the feet with a series of casts right after the child is born, kind of like braces like braces for teeth, and slowly move them out and then get them in the normal position. And once you get them in that normal position, you then have to hold the feet in that position for some period of time to maintain that position, let the bones harden, because children actually have very soft bones, they're very plastic. And if you just hold them in that place, they'll stay there. Just like wearing your retainer after braces, you can get your teeth to stay in the position. The same thing can happen with your feet. So essentially, the casting process is about education. Casting is actually pretty inexpensive, but the bracing required a device. And the device that they had at Miracle Feet, accessible in the developing nations, just weren't good enough. And that's what led to the project of like, we need something better to hold these kids' feet in the right position, because they were spending tons of their resources on trying to um, teach local providers how to do the castings called the Ponseti method and get the kids' feet into the right location. But then once they did it, they're having really big issues with compliance to the existing braces because the kids were having blisters and other issues where they couldn't stand in the brace, things of that nature. And because of those problems, they needed something better. And that's kind of where we came in.
Can you tell us what the design process was like with you and the design team at Stanford?
Yeah, that actually is pretty cool. So I got to give it up to the design team at Stanford. They do a great job. And so uh, there's like a structure to this, but the fundamental, most important part is just about understanding the user. So in this case, you have multiple users. It's like, who's going to use this brace? A child's going to wear it. So you have to think about what the experience is going to be like for the child. A parent is going to be putting it on the child, what the experience is going to be for the parent. And a physician is going to be using it. What's the experience for them? And then there's going to be the buyer. In this case, the nonprofit organization is going to distribute these. So you have all these people to think about. And the process, so the design process, the first step is really understanding each of these users, what their needs are, what their problem points are, what their pain points are. And so we kind of systematically went about that. So at Stanford, we'd go to the orthopedics clinics, we'd shadow the orthopedic surgeons who were doing these treatments, learn from them. Then we actually did a trip to a Clubfoot clinic in Brazil, or two Clubfoot clinics in Brazil, watched how the providers there took care of their the children. Then we spoke with the mothers. We saw what the children were using the braces and how they interacted with them and what issues they were having. And then we also spoke with the team from MiracleFeet and saw what their needs were. And basically, you just kind of pick up little things from each of them. We ended up using the needs of the users as like the design impetus. Like, so we learned that, for example, one of the big design features of this clubfoot brace was that it's flat, and so that a child can actually stand when they're wearing the brace. And every other brace before was curved. And so when we went to Brazil, one of the things that we noticed was that um, the children would always try, like many of the children would try to stand, like in their crib, like when they're in bed, they wake up, they try to stand. They couldn't stand on this brace. They had this curved metal bar between it. They try to stand, and they were all off balance and they fall. So we're like, oh, well, that's something that's bothering these people. Why don't we try to make it flat? And the parents didn't like it either because they were worried about their kids getting their developmental milestones. Like, oh, my child's a certain age, they should be walking and they're not walking yet. They're not even standing. I'm concerned about this. So we thought, how can we incorporate that into design? And questions like realizations like that are really what drove some of the changes in the design of this product so that it got closer to where it is now. And a lot of like the playful colors were more towards playing towards children and their interests. Um, Even the shoe design was from realizing that the leather shoes that were being used in some of the braces were causing blisters, and we would just go to these tropical climates where it's very hot. You don't want to be in like this warm leather shoe with no padding. Better to be in something that's fabric and soft and washable.
Mhm.
And so just seeing all these little points, they influenced all these small decisions we made. Probably one of the biggest things that we came to realize is that the process of watching a parent put the brace on is is actually really challenging, especially when you have this, one shoe and then a long bar and then another shoe. So okay, they can get the first shoe on, but now the kid's kicking this foot while you're trying to get this foot in another shoe, and that's just really cumbersome. So we're like, why don't we just separate the shoes and we'll put them on the bar afterwards? And so that seemed reasonable. So we did that. And then there was another brace that was in the US that was like the most expensive brace. It was very nice, it was well designed, had like silicone shoe molds and ratcheting straps and all this stuff. And that one had uh, a brace that could disconnect. And we're like, well, how can we connect it in a way that would be easier to put on and off? And and so all of these kind of questions started to influence where we'd make attachments, how we made the shoes connect and didn't connect, um, what the materials were made out of. And then the last thing we had to think about with all of this was Miracle Feet was like, look, our goal is to make this inexpensive. We want to be able to mass produce these and get them everywhere. How cheap can we get them? So we're like, okay, that influences our material design choices. So we're like, okay, we have to injection mold this. If we're going to make mass quantities at low cost, it's going to have to be an injection molded product. Okay, so now I have to design this to be something that's injection moldable. So it was like a lot of different features from like playful design with these swooping curves, a flat surface where the shoes kind of instead of the shoes being held up without anything supporting them below, we added like a bulk of almost like a reverse heel. So like the foot is pushed up, and that keeps the kid in the right position, but also makes it so that the brace, if the child tries to stand, is completely flat on the ground. So they can kind of stand and they can shuffle a little bit, and it gives them a little bit more capability than they had with the existing, well, a lot more capability than they had with the existing brace. And so all these little things were just like little design points, and it all was just influenced by the needs of the users.
You may have already spoken on this, but when did y'all start this process, and then how long did it take?
So there was like multiple design processes and like kind of like stages, I would say. And so a lot of the beginning, was probably just 3 to 6 months of just understanding what the needs were, just having booklets of like photos and videos and notes and just understanding what we wanted to look like, what we wanted things to look like. And then we started making really crude designs, like really, really crude things. Like, oh, let's take a toilet paper roll and like a shoe that we bought from Ross and screw it on and see what this looks like and just kind of show people and be like, oh, what do you think of this kind of idea? I know this isn't so sophisticated, but this kind of concept, like, what do you think of this general concept? And the idea was just to give people ideas. Like, look, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of this idea? Instead of drawing something out, we give them something that kind of conveys the idea. They'd be like, no, that's the problem. That's not going to work. I don't like this. I like this. I don't like that. And we did a lot of that very simple, very rudimentary design and feedback. And that was actually, it's like one of the things that they would teach us in the design schools, like try to make your design super simple, super quick in the beginning. So you can get the feedback right away and try to go through as many iterative cycles as possible early on. And that will guide you. Because like you think you're going to go this way, but then you build it and you're like, oh, actually, I made a mistake. I need it back there. And then zigzag until you get to the point. So that initial like crude designs were probably like 6 to maybe 12 months of fairly crude designs, but with each one getting a little bit more sophisticated because we kind of had figured out issues as we went and we were like, okay, I feel confident investing more time in this step so we can get more granular information. And then once we got to the point where we kind of had pretty clear design, it was about maybe a year and a half in or a year in. And then we started to reach out to our like the manufacturing partners. And so this is when the people from MiracleFeet did a great job of finding people who were interested in collaborating. And these were like big companies. So Clark's Shoes was really great and inviting us in and letting us work with their engineers. We actually flew out to their facility, showed them our designs, and their engineers were great. Like, oh, great, this is so cool. I love this. This is a great idea. Oh, we can change this and do this. And so we had all these ideas. And they were really important for us because the design of the shoes was way more complicated than we ever imagined. I remember sitting late nights on a sewing machine, just sewing in shoes, like sewing shoes together and coming up with all these different designs and cute patterns and all that. But once we got connected to the guys at Clark's, like, okay, we see what you need, we see what you're doing. We have machinery that's specialized for this and techniques that are specialized for this. And so they took our shoe design to like a next level. And then we worked with another company called Suncast, which is a injection molding company. And we brought them our designs like, oh, this is great. We see what you did here. We see how this connects. Okay. And then they would start to point out things like, okay, the way you made this tab connect to the shoe, this part needs to be reinforced because this will break. We can tell because we've done this 100 times. So like, okay, great. So we'd make some small modifications here and there to the device design until we got to a place where these manufacturing professionals are like, okay, now it's ready to be manufactured. And then from there, it was just making it and trying it again. And so that was our first production run. From there went to with the people from MiracleFeet. They took it down to that same Brazil in the same clinic in Brazil, and they started using it. And we got feedback and saw how they liked it, and we're pretty lucky. There wasn't much to change.
Mhm.
And then the team from MiracleFeet then did more, and they started submitting the idea for grants, and they submitted idea. Well, while we're in the design school, we submitted it for a grant to the C idea grant program, and actually won a grant for the project. And then the MiracleFeet team submitted it for another grant. They ended up winning a grant, I believe, from Google for an innovation design. Um, and then funny enough, just like 2 years ago, I was on a trip to Singapore and I was at the Red Dot Design Museum. And I'm walking through this design museum looking at all these cool things. I'm like, oh, these are so smart, all these designs. And they're sitting on one of the shelves with the MiracleFit brace. And I was
Wow.
there with my cousin. I'm like, dude, I invented that. It was a really surreal and awesome moment.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so cool. So you got to
Yeah.
see.
So but by the time
Okay.
yeah.
No, 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 you go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but by the time we kind of got to like pen down, design ready, and in like a kind of a press push. It had been 2 years, and that was like marking the end of I had finished. I just graduated medical school, and I left a residency. We had submitting documents to like the like press outreach department from Stanford to be like, hey, look what we made. We think this is really cool. Can you share it and see if anyone's interested in covering the story? And I had gone on to residency, and the engineers were kind of manning the liaisons between the major engineering companies and themselves. And it kind of got a lot of attention, got press, got like news articles and Wired magazine and MSNBC. And the engineer guys were on a couple interviews. It was cool.
Hmm.
I remember I was working like 15, 16-hour shifts. And I saw my buddies on TV.
So you were able to see firsthand in Brazil a failed brace, one of the braces that didn't work as well. Were you able to
Yeah.
ever go and see firsthand a brace being one of the braces that you helped design being used?
Yeah. I never got to see the final design in person, used. But we did get to go back and do prototype testing. And so I have seen like pretty refined prototypes on children, and families use them and parents use them and get their feedback. And it's rewarding. I mean, people were really happy with it, especially if they got a brace, if they were using, not the like $850 a piece brace, which is kind of used commonly in the US. Um, the people were pretty happy there. And the thing that really surprised us that we didn't really expect is we designed this for developing nations. The idea was like, this is a low cost brace that's going to be better than what they have, and have some definite improvements. But the idea would be it'd be low cost so you can mass manufacture and distribute it. And then when this brace got a lot of press coverage, the amount of people in the US who are like, we want this brace, I want this brace, why wouldn't I want this brace? Like was amazing.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if MiracleFeet ever actually is. I don't know if their plans are to distribute this eventually in developed nations. I think their focus was just trying to get the treatment to children who don't have access to care, and I think that's a much more common problem in developing nations than it is in the United States or in Europe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Sorry. I'm trying to get you, of course, you were on a team and helped create something that's now being used around the world and has helped change the futures for thousands of children. Can you talk about, I mean, what that feels like to know that you've helped give kids a chance to like live without pain and live normal lives?
It's not something I think about often, to be honest. I mean, it's the rare event that comes up, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'll see my Instagram feed, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. That's awesome. Or, like that time I walked through the Red Dot Museum, and I was like, oh my God, my brace is there. That's amazing. And I was just completely flabbergasted by it.
Uh-huh.
Um, Aside from that, it's not something that comes up in my life. Aside from like, I apply for a job, and this is something I did, and they're like, oh, what's this? Well, tell me about that.
Right.
Um, it's it feels good when I remember it, but I got to tell you, for 99% of my life, I don't see it. Didn't make a dollar from it, so
Hmm.
doesn't affect my life in any way financially. It's just feel good that I did something meaningful. I mean,
Right.
it feels it's funny. It feels so good. It's like something I'm always striving to accomplish again.
Hmm. Well, we were in
Yeah.
we did our first project with Miracle Feet in last year, 2024. And we got to go to Pakistan and meet people that, like doctors that work with clubfoot patients, babies, and meet with the parents and the families that have children that were born with clubfoot. And they rave about the brace. So it was awesome to hear. And just in general, I mean, we're partnering with them again this year in Nigeria. So we obviously love the organization. And a big part of that, the reason that we were even able and wanting to partner with the organization was because they were an organization that was working to be innovative in their humanitarian field and was willing to work with people like doctors and engineers to work on something that was needed in those developing countries. So um, we just really love the
I would
project.
love to come on one of those trips.
Yeah.
It would be
You
really,
should.
really exciting.
You
And I
should.
didn't like I said, I didn't really get that opportunity to see how people are doing. I mean,
Mhm.
I had most of the design experience in the beginning, was
Yeah.
just like really understanding what people wanted and needed.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious to see what like the design choices that I made, like how they how they influence people. Like, you
Right.
know, I remember sitting there trying to mess around with design, and then I was just like, oh my God, I can just make this whole thing flat. Why don't I just make it flat? I'll make the whole thing flat. And I was like, I felt like it was like a moment of inspiration.
Hmm.
And like, I actually don't know how much that's something people appreciate.
Right.
Um, and uh, and whether, whether my inspiration on that was on, or I was just
Yeah.
like, design something that people don't use as much as I thought they would.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, we are
yeah, it
going.
was a
Sorry, go
fun
ahead.
process, to say that.
Awesome. And then, well, you're a doctor, so I'm sure you're involved in a lot of research, right? Now in a different field of medicine. So what else
Oh yeah.
are you involved in?
So now most of what I do is related to cancer. And so I have a big research focus in bladder and prostate cancers. And so in the realm of prostate cancer, I've actually had some pretty big success in changing the way that prostate cancer is diagnosed. And so over the last 5 years or so, big focus of my research has been in prostate cancer. And in 2021, we actually published a paper in one of the most influential journals in the country that basically redefined what the optimal way to define, sorry, optimal way to diagnose prostate cancer is.
Hmm.
And the cool thing is that paper and the subsequent papers that came up from that work have now influenced like the American guidelines for urology and prostate cancer diagnosis, the European guidelines for urology and prostate cancer diagnosis. So my work is referenced like 20 something times in the most recent guidance document on how to diagnose prostate cancer, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously still doing work in the prostate cancer space. And then the work I'm doing in bladder cancer is probably uh, even more innovative in that it's trying to change the way we do things in a very meaningful way, specifically the way we remove these bladder tumors. And in bladder cancer, my research focus is on preventing recurrences by stopping the bladder cancer from reimplanting. So the way this works is, the bladder is like a sphere and it holds urine, and then we basically evacuate the urine by squeezing the bladder, and urine comes out of the urethra. And tumors can originate in the lining of the bladder, this inner part of the bladder. And the tumor will often like grow and protrude into the center part of the bladder we call the lumen. And the way that we remove these tumors now is we go into the really, really small camera and we cut little pieces off and we just shave this thing down until we get all the way down to the bottom and take it out. But the crazy part is by doing this, the rate of recurrence is actually very high. At 1 year, it's about 40%. And those recurrences are almost, if this is fully removed, almost never at this spot. They're at other spots. And so what's happening is the cancer is breaking off, it's floating around the bladder, and then it goes to the other side, and boop,
Oh no.
found a habitable place to live. It grows. And
Uh,
so you end up with this kind of problem that's analogous to like a dandelion in a field. And if you go and you try to mow over a dandelion and just chop it up, you can have dandelions everywhere. But you really need to do something to prevent that reimplantation or seeding of that cancer from another spot. And so currently in the early stages of investigating molecules to prevent that from happening. And we just recently, like 2, 3 months ago, had our first really exciting testing where we showed that we were preventing bladder cancer adhesion to the bladder cell wall by putting a very innocuous solution inside the bladder when these tumors are being removed. And so it was quite cool. It outperformed chemotherapy. So imagine pouring chemotherapy in the bladder and then cutting out the bladder tumor and
yeah.
seeing how much resolve versus putting in this innocuous molecule and then doing it. And so it's pretty exciting. It's early days, and I'm currently in the process of submitting for grants to try to support this research so we can explore it more. But you know how it is right now. You need most of these things are funded through government funding, and it's a strange time to get government funding for research. So we'll see how it goes. but this is now how I spend my like my nights and my weekends. Part of it is just writing grants to be able to fund this work so that we can hopefully reduce the risk of bladder cancer recurrence.
Okay. What motivated you to be a doctor?
I mean, I think it's something that appealed to me since I was a child because I just like the idea of like helping people in the time of suffering, being able to help, be helpful. It's just something that simple.
Mhm.
Um, and trying to be creative in some way. The ultimately though, when my dad was diagnosed with cancer and sort of seeing the journey he went through, that really solidified that I was going to do something in the oncologic space.
Mhm.
And going through residency and training, you see a lot of variety of suffering, and you kind of make a choice. You're like how intense of a life do I want? Like how big of a problem do I want to take on? And like how close do I want to be to something that's really rough, you can't take care of, or you can't take care of? And I think for me, I kind of found that happy medium in urology where it's just like I'm dealing with cancer, but with really good outcomes. And
Mhm.
that was what was right for me. Um, but yeah, it was just I saw the good doctors and the bad doctors took care of my dad, and I saw the difference it made. And I was like, okay, I can do this well. I want to do this well.
Mhm.
And so that was what drove me in that direction.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really enjoyed learning about what the process was like and your involvement in it. So,
Thank you. Yeah, it was really it was fun. It's fun to reminisce on that project. It was a great project, a
mhm.
great team.